Good evening and welcome into another episode of Cap and Trade. I am your host, Texans Cap. You can follow me on Twitter at Texans Cap, or if you prefer the written form, capandtrade.substack.com. Thank you for joining me tonight. I just wanted to do a little contract building session. Did a couple of these so far with Laramie Tunsil and Agbanaya Okoronkwo. Those were both with Houston. So kind of wanted to get outside of the Houston net and look at a potential free agent and, put a poll out on Twitter and on the YouTube community and Tremaine Edwards. I still call him Tremaine Edwards. Tremaine Edmunds garnered the most votes off of both polls. So, he's a middle linebacker, going to command a very, very strong contract, a top 5 APY contract. And so I figured, let's take a look at it and see what kind of numbers we can put together. Let's see how the statistics for him stack up and, compared to the other players at the top of the market. And, we're going to kind of look at this from a viewpoint of the Houston Texans and the contract. I'm going to try a slightly different contract structure tonight. Nothing outrageous, but it's more of borrowing from the Chris Olsen model that Houston used for quite a while. And, Andrew Brown, who still works for the Texans, was a disciple of Chris Olsen, who used to do all the contracts for Houston, and now Andrew does it. And so, I'm going to try to play with that structure a little bit. We'll see how it works. If it doesn't, we can pull it out. But kind of just want to take a look at that and see if it's something that can fit in for this. I'm not entirely sure that Nick Caserio and company would utilize it, but let's take a look at it. So, if you got any questions, comments, throw them up on the board. We'll get to everything we can tonight. Probably do this for 30, 40 minutes, and then we'll do a little open Q&A at the end if anybody's got any questions, comments, concerns. If you got any questions along the way, throw them up on the board. If I'll try to get to what I can. We'll stop what we're doing and we can answer the questions. But we'll have a good time tonight. It'd be a lot of fun. Good to see you, bud. My girlfriend calls me a nerd for watching this, but hey, no, you're not a nerd, man. You're right there with me. So hey, I appreciate it. Doing well. Gonna have a good night. I'm excited. Friday night. So one of the kids is asleep. The other one's about to go to sleep. So that's always good for me. All right. So let's get Mr. Edmunds up here on the board. Add him to the stream. All right. So just a little bio on Mr. Edmunds. And there it is. See, I built this PowerPoint slide on Windows, and then I moved over to my Mac computer, and it threw off the position title where it was at, linebacker. But so as you see, 24 years old, former first-round pick, 16th overall with Buffalo in 2018. Just finished up the 5th-year option with Buffalo. Buffalo's in a tight cap situation. They got a little maneuverability up there, but it's going to be interesting to see if they can retain Edmunds or not. But as you see when we get to the numbers, he's going to command a pretty strong contract. But he's very young. He's going to turn 25 in May. So that alone in itself, I mean, he's in prime years. He's turning 25 in May, hitting the stride, and you'll see that in the numbers as well, in the metrics. His first 3 or 4 years in the league, PFF grading was a little bit low, snaps were a little bit low, and then the last back half of 2021 and all of 2022 was one of the top 5 linebackers in the league. Fantastic player, very good in coverage. He's got good speed, 4.54 speed back in the combine. He's an excellent tackler. His missed tackle percentage is very low, which is something I think as Houston fans, as we all see, would welcome a sure tackler compared to what we were shown last year when it comes to tackling from this defense. So, he's a sure tackler. He's got long arms, a lot of speed, good in coverage. His run defense is probably his weak spot. He bites on play action. He kind of will make the wrong lane decision, and that's just gonna come with time, and hopefully if Houston can deploy a very strong front four, then that will line things up for Edmunds. But he did play the middle linebacker role. So for the sake of this exercise, you would be bringing him over as your Mike linebacker. He would probably wear the sticker, call the plays with Harris at will, and then whoever they end up bringing back or bringing in as strong side linebacker. But at the end of the day, when they go into sub defense, one of their sub packages, whether it's nickel or what have you, which, as you know, they run. Majority of defenses in the league now are running in sub packages 60-70% of the time. You're going to have Christian Harris, and in this case, if the Texans were to sign him, Tremaine Edmunds would be your two linebackers on the field. He's been relatively healthy. He did miss 4 games this past season and 2 games in 2021, and they were soft tissue injuries, which is a little bit of concern. Both of them were hamstring. I'm not entirely sure if it was the same hamstring or not, but I did, pulled the numbers from playerprofiler.com, and, so that's what it is. It's just something you just have to kind of keep in mind. We have a little bit of flexibility. We did, we'll see it in the contract, did some per game roster bonuses like Houston does. So, but that's just the bio on him. He's, young, fast, good in coverage, and plays the middle linebacker role very well. And it just seems the last season and a half has really come into his own, become a top 5, top 7 linebacker, and probably is going to continue ascending. Like we said, he's 24, only going to be 25 when OTAs come around. So we're going to be speaking in a lot of absolutes when I say Edmunds is here. This is just an exercise, an assumption that if he were on the Texans, then we could say he is here, things like that. All right, so let's drop this off and we'll get some of the metrics up here. So some of the players that we're going to be looking at is, I think, it's going to be your top 4 linebackers in terms of pay, of contract strength. Looking at terms of APY, it's going to be CJ Mosley, Fred Warner, Shaquille Leonard, and Roquan Smith. I've got their basic contract numbers up on the board here. And, Roquan just signed an extension back in January. He had a little bit of leverage with Baltimore because of the trade package that they had to send for him over to Chicago to trade for him. So he had a little bit of leverage. It was pretty much expected that he was going to top that 20 million APY number. But still, he's a very, very good linebacker. He's only 26 this year. So, as you look at all these ages that these players are at, it's pretty close to what Edmunds is at. 26 at signing, 25. 27 with CJ Mosley. Coincidentally, also came from Baltimore. So we're going to be fitting somewhere in here. And now I've already spoken to a couple of people who are at the combine right now, and I've got some rough estimations of what kind of market Edmunds will be looking at in terms of APY. But these are the numbers. The part that's going to be a little trickier here is all the players signed 5-year deals. We have yet to see Caserio and Houston sign a player more than 2 years once, and that was the punter. Everybody else has been on 1 and 2 year contracts. So I'm not entirely sure what kind of length and duration we're going to see with this type of big free agent signing. We haven't, Houston's just never been in that position to do that. So we really don't have any history or anything to work off of. But, we'll kind of work based around that. I don't think we're going to go to a 5-year deal, but we're going to look at something pretty close to it. Percentage of the salary cap. This is another key number to look at. So what this measure is, it's another way of looking at inflation. Basically, you take the APY and you divide it by the league salary cap that year. So Roquan Smith's number came in a little bit low because I went ahead and used the 2023 league cap, the $224.8 million. There was such a big jump from 2022 and from 2021 for that matter. almost 60, almost 40 million. So you take that 20 million APY, divide it by 224.8 million, and this is where you get your percentage. Shaquille Leonard and Fred Warner both signed their extensions in the COVID year. So that's why their percentages are much higher than Smith. And then CJ Mosley back in 2019 at 9%. He was an unrestricted free agent. I went ahead and put Roquan Smith as an unrestricted free agent because he was going to be a free agent come March. And this is what he would have seen on the open market. So it's not technically, yeah, it's an extension, but the way the agents in the market and the league is going to look at it is going to look at it as a free agent contract. So we're going to try to fit somewhere in here. And then we'll move down here to guarantees. Make this a little bit bigger. So the areas in green are the ones that have the highest numbers. CJ Mosley has 60% of his contract guaranteed, total guarantees. So that's guarantees full at signing, injury guarantees, anything that's going to vest into a guarantee, anything like that. That's captured in this number. Roquan Smith had a total guarantee of $60 million, and both him and CJ Mosley at 60% of their deal. Roquan Smith had 45 full guarantee at signing, which is a very, very strong number. And that's kind of a staple of Baltimore, not in terms of just like full guarantees, but they do big signing bonuses. They offer up a lot of cash early on in the contract, and you'll see that down here in the cash flow table. But they had to offer up quite a bit of guarantee for him. But that's just the Baltimore model, and you've heard me talk about that. We talked about that in the Tunsil extension show, about a month ago, because we were looking at Ronnie Stanley's contract. And Baltimore is just, they do that. They offer very, very strong cash flow in exchange for a little bit lower APY. But because they traded for Roquan Smith, same with the leverage that Tunsil had whenever he got signed, took his monster extension from Houston after being traded, he has a little bit of leverage. Shaquille Leonard, 33 million, Fred Warner, 27.5. That's not unsurprising for San Francisco. They really don't do guarantees beyond the first year. And then they have April 1st vesting dates, which is completely different from the rest of the league. The rest of the league operates around the new league year. Some of the teams like Las Vegas will do, and Seattle will do like 5th day of the waiver period, which is right after the Super Bowl. But April 1st is a different number. And I think that coincides with the fiscal year for the organization in San Francisco. So, some of these things you just know that's what you're going to have to deal with when you sign with certain teams. Same with Shaquille Leonard. He has pretty strong total guarantee, but the full guarantee, that's just how Indianapolis operates. So we're going to be trying to get a top of the 60% guarantee, 50% full guarantee, 45 and 60 millions. That's going to be some of our goals, some of our areas to work around. Now we're going to look at cash flow. So year over year, you just add the cash up that player earned year over year, and you get a running cash flow. So the year 0, that's the players on extension, Shaquille Leonard and Fred Warner. So think of it as if what year did Shaquille Leonard? So Shaquille Leonard signed his extension in 2021. He was under contract for 2021. I think he signed it that summer. So the new money starts in 2022. So the way we do it at OTC at overthecap.com is that new money, that money received on top of what he was going to earn prior to the new year starting. So this is essentially what he would have earned in 2021, first year of the contract, first new contract year, 2022. So this is what we're going to be looking at. And good to see you, John Henry. Glad to see you in here, buddy. Pretty quick, like I was talking about, Baltimore does very, very strong cash flows. What's up, Marco? Good to see you, bud. Good to see everybody here. All right, so we're looking at cash flows. Like I said, Baltimore always offers up very, very strong cash flows. Roquan Smith, $27 million in year 1. $45 million, $60 million. Shaquille Leonard was doing pretty strong, staying right with him. That's pretty good. He had a $20 million year zero, which is a pretty big number on an extension. And then had a soft year one, and then the money really kicks in year two for him. So we're going to be working off of these numbers as well, trying to get around in this 20, Fred Warner 25, 39. So we're going to try to fit it in somewhere in here. So just kind of keep those numbers in mind, and we'll go back and we'll reference those. So some of the stats I wanted to look at, I didn't want to dive too crazy into a lot of the metrics, because Edmunds, like we said at the beginning, he's going to command a top 5 contract. That's just the nature of free agency, given his young age, being turning 25 in May, his performance, the way the market is set up, not very much competition for him. All of these factors come in, and they're going to help him garner a contract that's going to put him as a top 5 highest paid linebacker. So what we tried to do, like same thing we did with Okoronkwo and Tunsil, is we look at the 3 years prior to signing their contract. So Roquan Smith signed his contract this past January, so we looked at 2022, 2021, and 2020 performance. Shaq Leonard, Fred Warner were 2021 signings, so we looked at 2020 back to 2018. CJ Mosley, 2019 back to 2017. And we just try to get a gauge of how those players performed in that 3-year period. We don't really want to look at their performance after they signed the contract. We want to look at the performance, because that's what we're looking at on Tremaine Edmunds, is his performance the last few years leading up to this point of potentially signing the contract. Games played, Roquan Smith's been very healthy. Shaq Leonard, Fred Warner's been healthy as well. CJ Mosley. So they've all, over a 3-year period, averaging out, are barely missing any games. Tremaine Edmunds, 1.3. Like we talked about, he had the hamstring issues in 2021 where he missed 2 games, and then he missed, I think, 4 games in 2022. So the soft tissue injuries are a little bit of a concern. Looking at their snap counts, Edmunds is a little bit lower, because it took him a couple of years to really solidify himself onto the field. Looking back at his PFF numbers, things like that, his snaps really didn't come on until 2021. And that's when, the team got Matt Milano in there, and just Milano and Edmunds really created this, one of the top linebacker duos in the league. So that percentage, that snap percentage was actually pretty strong the last 2 years, but we looked at a 3-year period, and that 2020 number was pretty low. So that's what drug his down a little bit. But if you were to look at it on a 2-year snapshot, he would be right in line with everybody else. Tackles, pretty well in line with everybody. Sacks, not a huge deal on linebackers, but I went ahead and threw it up here. But tackle for loss was something I was really interested in. And Edmunds, a little bit softer than the other players, maybe not as aggressive. Maybe that's a function of the system. Maybe that's a function of Leslie Frazier's defense and how he wants the linebackers to work. Their average depth of tackle, I think, Edmunds was a little bit higher, is about 3.5 yards of average depth of tackle on running plays. That's so 3 yards past line of scrimmage. Some of the other players on this list were sub underneath that, 2.5, 1.5, things like that. But like we talked about in the beginning, the run defense for Edmunds is probably the one weak spot that he might have. TJ, good to see you, buddy. Glad to see you on. Like I said, hello, Marco. John, good to see you. If you got any questions or comments, throw them up on the board. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you do that as well. It really helps out the show, helps it grow, helps it get viewed by other people's. Same with the like. Hit that like button, that little thumbs up button. Same thing. Helps the show, helps YouTube promote it out and get more viewers, and just helps the show grow. And that's what we need. All right. So interceptions is a little bit lower, but Nothing too terrible. He's very good in coverage. Very, very good in coverage. I didn't really I didn't really get a chance to take a look at passes deflected, but I would suspect that's probably in line with everybody. Sam, good to see you. Sam Blum, always here listening, watching. All right, so the PFF grade. I know you're not supposed to average their grades, but there's no way for me to look at a 3-year span of PFF grading for a player unless PFF wants to hand over an ultimate sign in, which I know they're not going to do. But yeah, so it's the same thing with him. His 2020 performance really drug down his number. If you were to look just at 2021 and 2022, his numbers would be right in line with these guys in the lower 70s. But that 2020 performance really brought him down. Another thing I wanted to look at was just a single grade the year before the contract was signed. So essentially, what was their PFF grade in their contract year? And look at that right there, 81.9, right in line above some of the other players. And one of the other areas I looked at was Pro Football Reference does AV, which is annual value. It's their own proprietary formula. That's just another way of gauging a player's value on a point scale, 0 to whatever. So this is a culmination of 3 years of AV. It's pretty close in line with everybody. And then you got the awards. Whereas Roquan Smith, he was all team, first team All Pro. Shaq Leonard, as we know, Houston Texans fans were familiar with his performance. First team All Pro, 3 years. Warner got one as well. Mosley was Pro Bowl. So a little bit lower in some of the areas, but it depends on how you view it. Like if you view it on a 3-year sample, his numbers are going to be a little bit lower because of that 2020 performance. But if you look at on a single year or 2-year sample, he's going to be right in line with everybody else. So, I don't have really too many concerns with these numbers compared to the top 4 paid linebackers in the league. I think he can fit in with these guys just well, and he's probably going to continue to excel and grow. So with that, we're going to jump over to the contract builder. And before we do that, Sam asked, do you prefer TJ Edwards or Edmunds? So right now, it'd probably be Edmunds. I'd have to go back and dive a little bit more into TJ Edwards. Both are very young, both are very good linebackers. But, same with Edmunds. I don't know if he's a product of – I think Edwards is more of a product of the front, the defensive front that Philadelphia has. Not to say Buffalo has a very good, strong front as well with Oliver Smith up there. But you couldn't go wrong with either of them. I don't know that Edwards may not have quite the same market as Edmunds, but we'll take. It might be something I'll have to go back and look at, Sam. All right, so let me stop this screen share, and let me get. That's my fault for not having contract constructor already going. Let me get over the cap up here. All right. Where'd my screen go? All right. So let me share screen. Contract constructor. All right. There we are. Let me get the view up a little bit. Is it Command Plus? All right. Make sure that looks all right. So everybody can see that. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a 4-year contract. I like these numbers. Yeah. I hear you, John. Yeah, 0. Those are great. All right. So I see some of the questions. We'll get to some of those questions here in a minute. All right. So I've got my Excel spreadsheet with my contract up here off to the side. What we're going to do is we're going to do a 4-year contract. big old whopping $18 million signing bonus. And then in year one, $5 million. So it's going to be 23 million in the first year. Now, if we go back and look at, remember, year one, Roquan Smith had 27 million. Shaquille Leonard had 26. Fred Warner, 25. So we're slotting in right below those numbers. Okay. Year two. $10 million. This is the one that we're going to borrow from my good friend who never returns my LinkedIn message, Chris Olson. We're going to borrow from his old methodology with a $5 million year two roster bonus. And I'll explain that here in a minute of why we're going to do that. We're going to do a full guarantee salary and roster bonus in year two. The reason why I wanted to do the $5 million roster bonus in year two was since we're only going to come in at 23 million in that first year, which is slightly below 3 of the 4 other linebackers that we looked at for comps. So to entice Edmunds and his agent, we're going to do a roster bonus, which would be paid out on the third day of the league year of 2024 in March of 2024. So essentially, 23 plus 5, he's going to have $28 million within 12 months of signing the contract, which is very, very strong. Some of the other numbers that we're looking at, they're getting that in year one. This is technically not year one. This would be year two, but we're getting it within 12 months of signing. So that's where I'm hoping to entice him with. So we added that guarantee, the $5 million to here for the $15 million. One thing to note, I know this is a very, very minor detail, but it's worth talking about. You cannot guarantee a roster bonus, full guarantee, like we talked about, skill, cap, and injury, the 3 factors of the guarantee. You cannot do a full guarantee on a roster bonus at signing, or else it will be treated like a signing bonus and it will prorate out over the contract. So what a lot of teams will do, and Houston did this all the time with these year two roster bonuses, they'll guarantee it for injury at signing, and then I don't even know where this rule is written at. It's not in the CBA. I think it's somewhere. It's probably in the bylaws that I cannot get a hold of. If you wait 72 hours, so 3 days after signing, then you kick in the rest of the guarantee. So you say the $5 million roster bonus is guaranteed for injury at signing. 3 days after signing is guaranteed for injury, skill, and cap. So it's what would be many would call a virtual guarantee. Okay, but for the sake of this exercise, it's fully guaranteed. You're not going to do anything 3 days. You're not going to cut the player within 3 days of signing. So it's just one little minor detail that I felt like should be discussed. All right, so year 3 comes the big numbers. 17.5 million. What we're going to do here is an $8 million injury guarantee that will vest into a full guarantee pretty early. And then the last year, also 17.5. And we're going to keep it pretty simple. Nick, like I always say, Nick loves his per game roster bonuses. We're going to do, and remember, those are always considered likely to be earned or adjusted based on the previous year performance. He didn't miss any games he missed 4 games. So I'm not going to, that number would come down a little bit. Some of it would be not likely to be earned because he missed 4 games last year. But for the sake of the argument, for the sake of this exercise, we're just going to keep them all likely to be earned. All right. Let me double check a few things. All right. The other piece that I wanted to do was some incentives. Like we know, Nick Casario loves his incentives as well. He loves to make my life a lot of fun. Everything's going to be not likely to be earned. We're going to do, let's see here. I think I did, yeah, so 500,000. So 2 million total of incentives. All right. There you go. 18.75 million APY. So it's just below the top three linebackers. That's below Roquan Smith, Shaquille Leonard, and Fred Warner, but it's above CJ Mosley. It can increase to 77 million over 4 years. So I believe that puts him at 19 and a quarter, so 19.25 million if he were to earn these incentives. And we'll put in the details on those here in a minute. 2 years of full guaranteed salary with that early roster bonus. So he's getting 23 million 500 the first year, 39 million in the second year total. But he's going to have 28.5 within 12 months of signing. 57 million through the third year, 75 through the last year. So what we're going to do on some of the notes here. So we got 18 million signing bonus, 2023, 2024 base salaries, fully guaranteed at signing, 2024 roster bonus, guaranteed for injury at signing, skill and cap 3 days after signing, paid on the third day of the 2024 league year. These are all contract notes that you would see all the time. Here, up to 500,000 paid 29,412 per game active in each year of the contract. So remember we talked about earlier in the beginning that we wanted to put a little bit of protection in there for his injuries. He missed 2 games in 2021 and 4 games in 2022 for hamstring injuries. So if he were to miss games and not be active, whether it's injury, IR, just being inactive for injury or whatever, this is just money that he's going to miss out on. So it's a little bit of protection for the team. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot more than that. For the incentives, it's 150,000 each year for Pro Bowl, original ballot. None of that Tyler Huntley, 5th reserve. And 350,000 each year. First team. We're going to do first team or second team, all pro. We'll be generous. From AP voting. It was pretty simple. It was not a major contract. Let's go ahead and export it out to PDF. And we'll get that shown up here in a second. All right. Let me get this file up here so we can look at the final product. Move this out. Too many windows at once. My goodness. All right. So there's the PDF. So that's the export that we would get whenever you export it out. So like we talked about, 18.75 APY. So what I heard from a few of folks that I talked to that were at the combine that he was going to get every bit of a contract north of 18 million per year. That's what I was told. So that's a lot of the information that I used to kind of work towards this 18.75 million number. But I didn't think he would be able to top 19 and get above Leonard and Fred Warner. So that was kind of my read on the situation. We'll see if he's able. Maybe he gets a few. It only takes two teams to really throw off the numbers and becomes a negotiation battle. But one note that I did forget to put in here, gosh darn it, was this 2025 vesting number. What I was going to do was this $8 million is guaranteed at signing for injury only. And then on the third day of the league year of 2024, same day as that roster bonus is paid out, that $8 million would shift over to a full guarantee. That's a year early vesting schedule. That's very aggressive. That's another area that, because this number is under 19 million, we're going to have to entice him with some other factors in the contract structure. One of these is an early vesting guarantee. So in 2024, by the third day of the league year in 2024, the second year of the contract, he's going to have 15 million already guaranteed with another 8 million set to guaranteeing in addition to the early roster bonus. So there's different ways. I mean, you can entice players just by the APY. Some of them, honestly, and it may be a fault of their agent, but maybe they just want that big APY number. I could fluffed up and put some massive number here in 2026 to get this APY at 19.5, 20 million, and he would have never seen it. But I think that's a little disingenuous. You saw that with all the wide receiver contracts this past year. They're all funny money in the last year. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, AJ Brown's the same thing. They're all funny money in the last year of the contract just to drive that APY number up really big. And I just don't like doing that. And so I kept things pretty flat, pretty even. And so in lieu of that big APY, like we talked about, early cash flow, early vesting schedule. So this 8 million shifts over to a full guarantee a year early. All these things plus additional 2 million that he can earn through awards for Pro Bowl and all team pro. So I think this is pretty accurate. We'll see when the time comes. But I thought that was a pretty fair contract, and I'm pretty happy with it. I've been kind of stewed on it most of the week, looking at the numbers and the his stats and his health and what the team can do to make this fit. The cap numbers are pretty soft. So $10 million cap number in year one and 20 million in year two. And let me put this back up here. So I want to talk about something else. So another thing the team can do with this contract is, say they really trying to max out the roster. Another thing you can do with these roster bonuses is you can convert them to signing bonus. You put language in the contract that would give the team automatic conversion rights. You can convert this roster bonus to a signing bonus. So that would change this 5 million, instead of being all amortized towards the cap in 1 year, in that 1 year, it would spread out over the last 3 years. It would prorate out. So you could save, that's 1.66 million per year. So you could lower this cap number down by 3.3 million if you wanted to make that conversion. He would still get paid the same. He would still get paid on the third day of the league year. He would still earn that money the same way, but it's just an accounting function. Like I say all the time on Twitter, if you follow me, salary cap is basically just an accounting function. And so you can take that 5 million, convert it to a signing bonus, write up the signing bonus addendum, have the player sign it, initial it, paid still the same. It's just accounted for differently. And you can save a little bit of money. You could do the same thing here. You could convert this base salary into signing bonus. But it's just a little bit of give you a little bit of flexibility for the team. It's just something else I wanted to. Another reason why I put that $5 million in there. But Chris Olsen and the Texans used to do that year 2 roster bonus and contracts left and right for like 3 years. It was really, really, really cool. So if you go look at a lot of the new Falcons contracts where Chris Olsen is working now in Atlanta, you'll see his fingerprints all over them. All right. So there we have it. So if the Texans wanted to sign Tremaine Edmunds, that's probably the number you're going to be looking at, 18 and a half, 19 million. We did pretty strong guarantees on this one. The full guarantee percentage was 50%, and the total guarantee was 61. So if we go back and look at, let me see, let me get this Excel spreadsheet back up here. So we did 38 million guaranteed with 48. So we came in a little under that. So the total guarantee is a little soft. It's 46 million. But the total guarantee was 38. So we're coming right in under these guys, which is fine. But like I said, we got very, very strong full guarantees. We beat the full guarantee percentage on this deal. The contract has 51% guarantee. So we beat that number. The total guarantee number, percentage-wise, is 61%. So we beat everybody's total guarantee number by percentage. But as we all know, percentages are not as sexy as the dollar figure number. But when you try to portray it that way, if you can convince the agent, percentage-wise, we're competing with the market, just not the hard number-wise. But you're getting that early roster bonus. You're getting that early vesting schedule. So that's the compromise in these contract negotiations. You try to find things that you can give to make up for other downfalls. So if he wants a bigger APY number, or he wants bigger guarantee numbers, we probably could have done a bigger guarantee instead of that $8 million in year 3 that we're talking about with the early vesting period. I could make that a bigger number, say 14, do the whole thing, or 15 million, add another 7 million. Then we would have beat a lot of these guaranteed numbers, but I'm not given an early vesting schedule on that big of a number. I would have to wait until 2025, the 3rd year, before I guarantee that number. So, that's a lot of the give and take with these negotiations. What can we do to get a contract where both sides feel comfortable and both sides feel like, hey, we came out on the good end of this? The team is getting a very good linebacker at a 4th highest paid. The player's getting early cash, early vesting schedules. The team has some outs, has some flexibility in the contract. Like I said, with the roster bonus, with the accounting of it, you can change that to a signing bonus. There's a lot of flexibility in there. You can get out of this contract after year 3. If you really had to get out of it after year 2, you could do that as if you wanted to, but you'll have to take on that $8 million. But, it's essentially a 3-year deal, 2 years and some hurt, however you want to look at it. But I think it's pretty fair. I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. That's it, So Marco said he guessed 17 million. So it's a little soft, but I think it's gonna be every bit of 18, close to 19. TJ says crazy how young he is after 5 years in the league. Yeah, that was one of my big selling points for him, was that he's 24, turns 25 in May, and all these other players were signing contracts when they were 26, 25 and 26 years old. So I think that's pretty cool. Seems like a strong contract that would wipe out roughly half the cap space currently. From the effective side, yeah, but the teams that, like, I think after today with the with the signing of Kendall Sheffield, the defensive back, and they released Justin Britt today. So that created about $2.5 million in cap savings. So they're up around $35 million. The effective number is down around 23, but there's other avenues. I think the Brandon Cooks trade, that's going to open up another $10 million. Laramie Tunsil extension will open up probably another $8 million. And then there's some other players they can take a look at. Maybe Christian Kirksey, maybe Eric Murray. Excuse me. Some of those players. So, yeah, if you look at it right now, yeah, it takes up half of the effective cap space, but I think there's ways to work around it. I don't think it's too much of a detriment. You're going to pay top dollar for free agents. That's just the way it is. Some call it fool's gold. You're paying market value, top dollar market value for what production you may get. And as we've written before, the return on investment with free agents is usually pretty low. So, you hope you hit it right. You hope he fits. I says would love to see it, but not sure I see us signing a premier free agent based on Nick's comments. Just as, and that's the case. That may be the case. New England wasn't big on signing free agents. They would surprise everybody and do it. Like Stephon Gilmore out of nowhere, big free agent contract. They did it with Darrell Rivas, Randy Moss. A few different players, but they would kind of spot and pick where they go. We just don't have enough evidence on Caserio. And does he value a linebacker? Does D'Amico Ryans value a linebacker at this type of pay? San Francisco did with Fred Warner. But he was a top 5 linebacker and very well deserving. It was a big projection on that contract as well. He's kind of the same path as Edmunds. First 2 years were pretty rough, and then just really spiked up into that contract year. And continued on. Fred Warner continued on playing very well even after the contract was signed. So will Nick sign a big player like that? We don't know. We just don't have the evidence. We don't know if he values pass rush over coverage, or, New England typically didn't pay wide receivers, but we saw Nick sign Brandon Cooks at outrageous, at the time it seemed like a good deal, but now it seems like a horrible, horrible deal, Brandon Cooks. But we just don't know. He hasn't had any big free agent signings. This is the first year he's had some decent amount of cap space to work with. So we'll have to just wait and see what's going to happen. But, he's going to be aggressive somewhere. I do wonder what we're going to do. 100 million we have next year. That number is going to go down. That number will go down quite a bit once they get free agency, get players signed through free agency. They're going to be hitting the cap next year. That number, once you get the draft class and all that number will come down. Don't even look at that 180. If you're like Travis, you got any questions, comments, throw them up on the board. Got plenty of adult beverages ready to go around. So happy to answer any questions. Quick question. Why does your cap space not match up with what Over the Cap says? Yeah. So the reason why that is, Travis, is Jason, who owns overthecap.com, has some adjustments, annual adjustments, already put in place. So when we're updating the contracts at the end of the season, we try to factor in the adjustments. So say it for like Justin Britt, right? Justin Britt was scheduled to have, I think, over $600,000 and per game roster bonus pay that was going to count against the cap, and he only played one game. So there was like 480, something like that, 490,000 in cap credits that should come back to Houston for 2023. You add up all those credits or all those deductions, depending on which side of the equation they fall under, that all goes towards your annual adjustment. I think Jason right now has an annual adjustment in there of 2.7 million or 2.27 million for Houston. So that's why you see a number that's going to fluctuate 2.5 to 3.5 million between my numbers and his numbers. He's got that number in there. It's an estimation. we're going to get full adjustment numbers probably next week or towards the end of next week. Hopefully, we'll definitely get them before the league year starts. They'll leak out, or I'll get a hold of them myself before then. And but Houston's going to come in anywhere from 2.5 to 3 million. Once that number is official, you'll see my numbers and his numbers line up to the T, because I put in the numbers on that website for the Texans. So to answer Travis' question, that's why, because he has the adjustment number already placed in estimation. I have a 0. If you look at the chart that I put up today, I have a 0. Well, no, you can't even see it in there. I have a 0 in for annual adjustment. That's why. Okay. Do we think we're re-signing Tom? I hope so. I really hope so. Tavier Thomas more so. He's my number one free agent priority. Ogbo, I'm not convinced that he's going to be big enough for what D'Amico Ryans wants out of a defensive end. He's only 240 something pounds, and all the defensive ends in San Francisco were 260 and up. So I'm not entirely sure he's going to fit with what D'Amico wants, but he's got all the speed and the skill to do it and to be a good rotational pass rusher. Now, Tavier Thomas, he's a very, very underrated slot cornerback. And I think the team really needs to prioritize him. I think they can get him at a fairly low number, not too crazy. There's a very strong cornerback draft. So maybe you can sign Thomas to like a 2-year deal. And I think the team should definitely be looking at cornerback. You got Steven Nelson, who's the last year of his contract. And then if you can get Thomas back on a 2-year deal, and you got Desmond King back there as CB4 as depth, that would be my hope. Yeah, I hope Tavier Thomas is back at least. Speaking of the $180 million, next year was your best guess of where they'll be this time next year, probably down 25. It's hard to say where they'll be at this time next year. Like Nick says, this is 2-year windows, but they're going to have plenty of space. And it really depends on how heavy they go into free agency, obviously. But I think they're going to be pretty aggressive, and I think they're going to be even in a better spot. They'll be even in a better spot for next year. I think he's got the cap clean. Everything's in good spots. Once he gets that Cooks deal off the books, they still need to release Reeves Maben this year. I think that's probably your only other big release that might be coming down. But the team's going to be in good shape. Once it's all settled, they're still going to have 30, 40, 50 million heading into next year. I think it's going to take 2 years of pretty aggressive spending to get back to where things become a little tight. And then that's at the point where you're going to have Tunsil under a pretty big number. You're going to have maybe Titus Howard under a big number. Edmunds, or a player like Edmunds, big number. And then you're going to start set aside money for your rookies from like the Jalen Petries, Derek Steenlegas, players like that. So they're in good shape. They've got things going in the right direction. Other than that, that's really all I wanted to cover tonight. We hit a lot of information here, a lot of big news, and tomorrow's a big day for the combine. Tomorrow's a huge day. Going to finally see the quarterbacks measure up. If I had to guess, I think Bryce Young is going to come in at 5'10" and 3/4 ish, 198, 199. Depends on how many milkshakes he drinks tonight. But he's going to be right around the 200-pound number. Does he play at that weight? Who knows? We'll see at the pro days. It sounds like he's not going to throw until April 6th on the second pro day for Alabama. But, it was interesting. I was listening to the Athletic Football Podcast, one of my favorite podcasts. And I was listening to Robert Mays, and he had some guys on there that cover the Bears. And Robert Mays is a big Chicago Bears fan. And they were talking about what Chicago should do at number 1. And I've said it on here. I said it on here, Wednesday night or last Wednesday night? or no, this past Wednesday, thoughts on the combine when the Jalen Carter news came down that Chicago wants a 2024 first rounder no matter what. Doesn't matter where you're coming from. Slot 2, slot 4, that's a minimum. And then if you're outside of the top 5 or top 5 and back, Robert May said he heard your first, your second this year, your first next year, and your second next year. So exchanging draft picks plus 3 more. So if you're in the top 5 or back, you're looking at Atlanta, looking at Carolina, you're looking at Las Vegas, Seattle if they don't get Geno Smith signed. Those teams are going to have to offer up a bunch. And that's going to put Houston in a very precarious spot. I still don't think Chicago has as much leverage as they did before. I think it's gotten worse. I think Arizona's in the driver's seat at number 3. But if Chicago was really going to be able to trade out of that spot, there's no way Houston can compete with Indianapolis or anybody coming back, because I really don't think it's a big deal that Chicago moves back from 1st to 5th, 6th, or 7th. I think this draft class outside of Will Anderson, and we don't know what Jalen Carter and what the slide's going to be for him. We just don't know how far back he's going to move. So once you get past Will Anderson, I mean, there's no just major game changers after that. So in my opinion, Chicago can come down to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and get a boatload of picks. Nothing that Houston's going to be able to compete with. So what you're hoping is that the team that's trading up is not eyeballing the quarterback that Houston wants. And this is just working off the premise that Houston really likes Bryce Young. So if that were the case, then you're hoping that the team that may leapfrog you are battling it out for C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. So we'll have to just kind of wait and see. And the part that I really found interesting that they were talking about was Chicago wants to get any potential draft trades done early, like next week early. These are kind of trades you probably wouldn't hear about going down until the night before the draft or draft week, things like that. And it's for good reason. They're talking about having ammunition for free agency. And what they're talking about in the terms of is having an additional second-round pick that they could trade for DeAndre Hopkins or Mike Evans, or using a 4th-round pick, maybe they got an additional 4th-round pick or whatever, to go get a veteran quarterback who's got 1 or 2 years, just a veteran player who's got 1 or 2 years left on his deal, or a rookie who's ascending, spend a 2nd-round pick to get them before they hit free agency. And it's an interesting thought process. It's having all that draft capital to know exactly where you are before you get to free agency so that you can make a trade for a veteran or an ascending player, a player that a team like. I know Duke Tobin came out for Cincinnati and said they're not trading for T. Higgins, but use that as an example. Maybe Chicago gets they're an extra first next year and swaps first this year. Maybe they can take that extra first for next year and trade for T. Higgins or a player like that who's ascending, going in the back end of their rookie contract. And it gives you a year to look at them and really set up for free agency. So that would be really exciting if Chicago is able to trade that pick next week or right at the beginning of the new league year instead of waiting till. I think the NFL would be a little upset. I'm sure the NFL would rather have that trade happen draft week or the night of the draft. But, it's just interesting. We'll have to kind of wait and see. But I feel like Houston's just kind of stuck in no man's land, right? They can't compete with any teams that are wanting to come up to 1.01. So they're just going to have to stay put, or if somebody leapfrogs them and takes Bryce Young or takes the quarterback that Houston wants, whoever it may be, does Houston trade back? Do they move out of that spot, or do they just stay put and take Will Anderson? I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun, man. A lot of things to talk about. A lot of theoretical situations that may happen there. Marco says, I read that Cooks has 2 years left on his, or is that just contract length? No, he does. He has 2 years left on his deal. He's got 2023 and 2024 with an early roster bonus in 2024. I think it's a $5 million roster bonus. So, yeah, 2 years left on that deal. Well, we should just be left out and absolutely need all those first. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's you're not going to be able to compete with that. You're just not going to be able to compete with that at all. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I think those teams, like I said, I think Indy can offer up, they're in a slot 4, so maybe they offer up the swap of 1 to 4, their second rounder and their first rounder in 2024. Houston should not be trying to compete with that. The only way you're competing with that is if you're just dead set on getting the exact same, you're fighting with Indianapolis on the same quarterback, and you hope that's not the case, but it's going to be tricky. So I appreciate everybody hanging out with me tonight. Aaron Wilson is going to join me on Sunday night for a rare Sunday night episode. He is flying back from Indianapolis tonight. He should be landing in about 30 minutes. Don't know why I know when he lands, but I do. So I'm really excited to chat with him. He's going to it'll be interesting. I may not get to talk very much. Aaron likes to talk. And so it might be the Aaron Wilson show on Sunday, but he's going to have a lot to talk about. He's going to have a lot of information that some of it he can and can't share, but he'll have a lot of tidbits to give to us on Sunday night of what he heard, what he heard at the combine, maybe Houston related, free agency wise, draft pick wise, trades, anything like that. I think this is going to be a very active trade period when it comes to free agency. Normally right before the league year, you see a few trades here or there. But I think this year, because of the cap situation that the half of the league is in, that they're all tied up against the cap, I think you might see a lot of free veteran players, or you're going to see some trades more so than usual. You might see 5 or 6 or 7 trades the next 2 weeks. Hopefully Brandon Cooks is a part of that. They have, Brandon Cooks' agent is supposed to meet with Houston this week to kind of discuss those kind of things. Hopefully Caserio gives Cooks' agent the right to go out there and just find a trade partner. But, I think it's going to be a very active trade session when it comes to free agency. So that part is, I think that's something that's going to be very exciting for me, because I try to track those and see, especially with the ones that are buying draft picks with cap and cash. So that stuff's going to be really cool. Overall, wants to know any names that combine and piqued your interest after measuring Rangers. Not really. I don't know that stuff well enough yet. I'm trying to learn it better, and I rely on the experts to give me informed opinions. But I'm sure after we get through the combine, all the draft boards are going to reshuffle and make sense. But I will say I'm a big proponent of drafting athletes, players who measure well. You still want football players. You still want players that produce. And it's always going to be that conversation of traits, traits versus production. You kind of want to meld the two between the first 2 years, or the first 2 rounds. And then when you get back in this, day 3, you really want to get those high trait value players that hopefully you can coach up. But, I don't have any specific names at the moment. I honestly haven't been able to watch much of the combine. Just what little I see on social media, but I just have to leave that to the experts and, catch their informed opinion. There's a ton of good people in draft Twitter, ton of good information out there. And, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Free agency is coming up. Important dates to keep in mind coming up. You've got the franchise tag deadline on Tuesday at 3 p.m. So the combine ends, I think, Sunday or Monday. You're going to get a rash of tags coming in. There's only one in place right now, which is Jerron Payne. New York Giants are trying to re-sign Daniel Jones close to $40 million a year. I tweeted out what might happen with that, so go check my timeline for that. But Daniel Jones, it's not going to be a real $40 million per year. It's going to be 2 years at the tag value, which is like $71 million. Let me get another drink. It's going to be, if they did a deal. So let's say the Giants did a 4-year deal. And I know Travis, a good show, Cap. I'm not done. So let's say Daniel Jones signs a 4-year deal. I think it's going to be 2 years at the tag value, probably fully guaranteed. So 70 million, 71 million, fully guaranteed. And then it's going to be some fluffed up numbers in the back end of the contract to get him up to that 39, 40 million APY. But really, in reality, it's going to be a 2-year deal at 35 million per year. That's what it's going to be if they signed it, if they get the deal done. And I think they really want to get Saquon Barkley on the franchise tag. I think Barkley's market would probably exceed that $10.1 million franchise tag number, $12, $13 million a year. So I think New York is not even close to having a contract put together with Barkley based on what his market's going to be. So they want to franchise tag him and get a Daniel Jones extension done. That's a tricky situation, man. I get that you want to sign the player, and show your locker room, and Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll trying to create a good culture there, and you want to show your locker room that you reward performance, you reward players that do the right thing, you reward players that play well and buy into the system. Was Daniel Jones a top tier quarterback this year? No, but they got to the playoffs. He did well. And maybe he continues to grow. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I have a hard time, but that's a tricky situation for them. And so to get around it, instead of just saying, we'll franchise tag you, we'll give you a 4-year contract with the first 2 years matching the franchise tag that you would get now, $32 million. And I think 120% of that, which would be $37 million or something like that. So it's like 71 million over 2 years. So, but like I said, important dates coming down. So Tuesday is the franchise tag deadline. Probably Tony Pollard in Dallas. So that's going to free up Dalton Schultz. See if he ends up hitting the market. Josh Jacobs in Las Vegas. So we're going to see a lot of running back tags. Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley. Going to put Miles Sanders in the driver's seat when it comes to free agency in the running back group. Be very curious to see what his market is. Probably a little under 10, 8-9 million per year. And he's got a little tread left on the tires there. But March 7th, franchise tag deadline. And then the following Monday is March 13th. Yes, March 13th, that Monday, is the stupid legal tampering period. So you have 48 hours where agents can negotiate with teams, but not sign contracts. But you'll see some agreements come in place. And then March 15th at 3 p.m. local time is when the new league year starts. That's when trades can become official. That's when all the tenders need to be put in place for your restricted free agents, exclusive rights free agents. Not really applicable to Houston. They have one exclusive rights free agent, Darius Anderson, but I don't see that. It's no difference. There's a minimum salary. So, and in addition to that, teams need to be cap compliant by then. They cannot be over the salary cap. If they are, they have 7 days to fix it. They can't sign any other contracts. Any other contracts they have pending would just be put on hold. But essentially, everybody's going to be cap compliant by March 15th at 3 p.m. You're going to start to see a lot of restructures this coming week. You've already started to see a little bit of it, especially with New Orleans, Green Bay, teams like that. You're going to see a lot of restructures, some funky extensions, phony extensions with void years, things like that. And you're going to see a lot of player releases, not with Houston, but across the league. So every time you see that big name hit the screen, so-and-so's been released, is now a free agent. It sounds good, big name, but you always got to consider, why is that team letting him go? Teams can make things work with a player. They can keep a player signed if they really want to. So why are they releasing him? Is there a skill issue, age, system fit, things like that? But there's always something to it. I shouldn't say always with certainty, but 90% of the time, there's a reason why a player was released that's not beneficiary to keep him on the roster. So, keep that in mind when you see these big names hit the free agency market, and, whether or not the team should go sign them. Free agency is always fool's money, fool's gold. Very rarely do you get a Jonathan Joseph that you sign a free agent, get market value, return on your investment for 8 years. Do you think Lamar gets traded? Boy, that was funny today. I can't stand Barstool. Whatever you think about them, great. But that was hilarious that Adam Schefter pranked those two knuckleheads with the fake text message from Eric DaCosta. So, it was a fake text message saying it was from Washington, saying that they were going to get the trade with Lamar done, blah, blah, blah. The team that seems to be really hot and heavy on Lamar when it comes to a trade is Atlanta. Not entirely sure if I buy it just yet, but they got the resources. They run similar offenses. Arthur Smith is a very, very good offensive play caller down there, the head coach. They've been talking big about Desmond Ridder and how they're ready to run the season with him. But that's just, does he get traded? And you're going to have to give a new contract. You're going to have to give probably close, fully guaranteed or something close to it. So I would put it at like a 60% chance he gets traded at this point. The relationship between Baltimore and Lamar seems to have soured a little bit, but money fixes everything. But I know Baltimore's not going to fully guarantee that contract. That's just not part of their structure. They just don't do that. And it's going to be interesting to see if another team is willing to do it. I think the league views the Deshaun Watson contract an outlier. I think they'll continue to view it that way for quite some time. They're going to fight the full guarantees. And I'm not entirely sure Atlanta's the team that's going to give a full guarantee. They didn't want to guarantee Watson's deal. They were the front runners on the Watson trade until they did not want to guarantee year 4 and year 5 of the contract. So I'm not entirely sure they're going to do the same thing for Lamar. But they're not going to trade for him without knowing that they can get a contract in place. So that would be my guess. All right. I think that's it. I think that's everything. Yeah. I think that's it. All right. So I appreciate everybody hopping in, listening along. Thanks for all the comments. Like I said, if you haven't subscribed to the show, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Helps everybody out, helps the show out, helps me out, helps us continue to make this thing a bigger and better thing. I'm working on, like I said, we got Aaron on Sunday, Brad Spielberger from PFF on Wednesday, and then Jason Fitzgerald, owner of Over the Cap, the week after that on the 15th. Very excited to talk to Jason, my mentor, super sharp dude. And then I'm working on some guests for the weeks after that, all the way through April leading up to the draft. So appreciate everybody following along. had a lot of fun tonight. I love building these contracts and kind of going through the nuances of the give and take, and where you can try to bleed in and find holes and everything. So we'll see you Sunday night, man. I'm really excited for talking to Aaron. He's gonna be ramped up, ready to go. So with that, make sure you hit that subscribe, like button, and we will shut it down. And everybody have a wonderful night. Thank you.